President Trump tweeted the word Africa last night for the very first time in his presidency. He's obviously spoken about Africa before, using a reference to S-hole countries, but this was in defense of white farmers in South Africa. As the Washington Post reports, the president was hitting back at efforts by South Africa's ruling party to pursue constitutional changes allowing the government to redistribute land without compensation. This is part of an attempt to address, quote, racial inequalities that have persisted nearly a quarter century after the end of apartheid. The president's inspiration was this segment from Tucker Carlson on Fox News.
President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has begun, and you may have seen this in the press, seizing land from his own citizens without compensation because they are the wrong skin color. That is literally the definition of racism. It's totally okay for South Africa to steal property for racist reasons because they are, quote, a strong democracy.
After watching that segment, the president tweeted that he's asking his Secretary of State to, quote, closely study the South African land and farm seizures and the large-scale killing of farmers. South Africa's government slammed the president in response, tweeting, "South Africa totally rejects this narrow perception which only seeks to divide our nation and reminds us of our colonial past." I want to bring in Malcolm Nance, who worked intelligence operations in Africa and as a private security contractor in South Africa. Malcolm, this is a nuanced issue. What's the actual problem in South Africa?
The actual problem in South Africa is an enormous, almost 40% unemployment rate of the majority of the people in South Africa who are the South African blacks. As you know, there's three classes. Up into the period of apartheid, the nation was divided into three classes of people. Whites, who are about 8% of the population. Coloreds, who are about 10%, which is mixed race. Indian subcontinent, people like that, mixed race. And then the ethnic population that is the majority there, which are the blacks from South Africa. They have this enormous unemployment rate. As many as 20 million out of 55 million people are unemployed or are living on basic subsistence in South Africa. So really, it's crime in South Africa is almost exclusively the domain of the poor and unemployed in that country.
All right, let's go over some of the responses on Twitter to the president's tweet. Laura Loomer says, "Before we get involved in South Africa, I hope people realize our battle is here on the home front. We've got a lot of anti-white racism here in America and jihadis running for office." And this tweet from a neo-Nazi white supremacist group: "South Africa serves as a warning to people of European heritage all over the world. If we lose control of our country, things will go poorly for us." And these, the voters, these are people who the president is counting on to sort of stay in his base. So it sort of works for him to bring up this whole idea of South Africa to sort of warn people that this could happen to us. I think the important part here is the context you bring up. South Africa is not America. Its history is very, very different from America's. It's got a very long history under apartheid and in the quarter century since of not figuring out how to redistribute wealth and make the majority prosperous.
Right, you're absolutely right. And you have to understand something. Just up until 1994, when apartheid ended, that three-tiered system of which some people were less than human and the rest, the whites were the majority, ruled the government, 95% of the land was in the hands of 8% of the people.
Yep.
And so the other tens of millions of people had absolutely no opportunity to even be subsistence farmers to a certain extent. Fortunately, they had a good, peaceful transition. When I was there in Cape Town, which is a bastion of diversity, despite the fact that there was a very high crime rate there, this nation is a nation in transition. For the president to jump into this without any understanding of the situation and without understanding even the dynamics that are on the ground, he essentially pushed not even an alt-right. There is a Voortrekker, a South African neo-Nazi movement there, which pushes this white genocide, farmer attack meme. They've had 50 farmers killed in the last year. When you consider the size of the country out of 55 million people, we don't even know if they were all white farmers. These were deaths on farms where most people work. So the president has really just jumped right into the middle of a white supremacist meme and has tried to use that as some sort of stepstone to inform the American public of something that none of us can understand. Certainly the people at the CIA's Africa desk and State Department must be pulling their hair out right now.
Malcolm, good to talk to you as always. Malcolm Nance, MSNBC terrorism and intelligence analyst.